There must be a million videos on YouTube that put forward the scenario of a world without men. For feminists, this must be a truly delightful thing to contemplate, but I suspect that most of them would be more along the lines of the MGTOW movement, questioning whether society would survive or how it could survive in that eventuality. Whatever the case is, I haven't really found too many, but still I'm going to ask the question now. If all the men in the world disappeared overnight from some, fatal disease or something like that, how long would Western civilization continue in its current form? Because I think that question, I say somewhat sarcastically, would raise a few question marks about the whole theory of women's equality and how women could cope just really nicely without men. Not only the non-existence of these men who spend all their time oppressing women, but also demonstrate just how equal women are and would just sort of take over the reins of civilization and keep things going. And that is what feminists would, of course, blithely assert. So the first thing I would bring up would be international air travel. Like, who would fly the jumbo jets? And the feminists would say, women would just quickly learn how to fly jumbo jets. I don't think there are many women in the world who can fly large passenger jets. Would certainly be splashed over the front pages of the leftist media if that were the case, which is always a rule I apply, that if feminists haven't really succeeded in a particular field, the lack of media coverage in these areas would indicate that feminists have taken a bit of a hit here. But my question would be, who would fly the jumbo jets? And the feminist retort would be something along the lines, women are pretty smart. They quickly learn how to fly a jumbo jet. So who would teach them? Is the tiny number of women who can fly passenger jets, what would they be doing? Would they be supplying a skeleton service for just a few really crucially important international air flights for statesmen and such, or medical emergencies after an earthquake or something like that? Or would they be spending all their time teaching other young women how to fly jumbo jets? Because assuredly, there would not be too many women around who can do that. And that is flying jumbo jets. So what about something perhaps even more crucial, as in the male-dominated skill of providing service backup to the planes to keep them in the air? The men, not women, men, who can pull out a jumbo jet engine, strip it down, put it back together again, in order to keep these things flying. How many women? A lot fewer, I would think, women work in this area than would actually fly jumbo jets. At this point, it would be appropriate to think back to the 1970s, 1977, I think it was, when an Australian airline was sued for not allowing or not permitting women to fly its jets. They would not employ women as pilots for their airline based on the fact that women have little aptitude for operating heavy machinery, and they were duly sued by feminists, and, believe it or not, would you believe, the feminists actually won the case. And my observation following on from that would be just how many women are flying passenger jets in Australia since 1977. Very few, if any, I would think, which validates the quote-unquote prejudice the airline had against utilising women as pilots. Of course, feminists would retort and say that, if just one single brilliant female aviator gets a job at Ansett Airlines, that justifies the whole process. Well, I think not. I think it proves if there are no women in 2019, or very few, if any, women in 2019 flying large passenger jets in Australia, it pretty much indicates the quote-unquote prejudice that the airline had back in those days. Of course, you could take this subject in so many different directions. For example, let's take cars, automobiles. I mean, pretty soon the cars that women drive would start to break down. So who's going to fix them? Now, there might be a few mechanically minded women out there who could make a bit of a go of it, but basically the cars would just start breaking down and they would eventually just be off the road because nobody could fix them en masse. And, you know, petrol wouldn't be too much of a problem. There's heaps and heaps of gas stations around, and with lots of petrol supplies, that'd be okay for a while. And of course they'd start to run dry. And then women would have the problem of how to resupply gas stations with fuel from petrol refineries. And how are they going to do that? I mean, how many women have any idea? Well, firstly, like how to just transport the fuel from the refinery to the gas stations and fill up the sort of tanks at the gas stations for a start, to say nothing of like how the actual refinery works to how an actual oil refinery operates in order to resupply the garages. And of course one could go on and on about this subject, looking at all the different things that people do in their day-to-day life that makes society run on a normal sort of footing, things that need repair, things that need maintenance. I mean, women would be just totally incapable of keeping society running. Noted feminist author Camille Paglia once said that in a world without men, women would resort to living in grass huts. And I think that is a pretty astute observation and good summation of what the world would look like without men. It reminds me of that village in the original Planet of the Apes movie. It was basically a collection of mud huts. There was a little bit of technology, you know, like they had guns and stuff like that, but, you know, basically it was a case of horse-drawn carts and just very, very rudimentary technology. This whole subject is just a total Pandora's box for feminism, because it's so bleedingly obvious that civilization in its present form has been established by and run by and continues to be run by men. And this makes nonsense of the whole feminist project. Bye for now.